If I told you I'm excited, it's an understatement. Previously, I've used these Sirui anamorphic lenses, and the new Sirui 40mm anamorphic primes are way better. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys enjoyed that intro. Just by the way, everything you heard was completely added in post. The high heels, the opening of the door, the scratching in the bag, the car keys, the car, none of that was real audio. Even the super cool track that you heard came from Soundstripe, and they are the sponsor of today's video, but more about them a little bit later. Now, as you may notice, there are two black bars on the side over here. This video isn't super widescreen, and that is because unlike what you usually see on YouTube, where it's the anamorphic video compressed in with the black bars, I'm giving you the native kind of feel and rather uploading this normal lens video that you're looking at here with the black bars on the side. So when I switch to the anamorphic, you can get the full experience on what anamorphic is actually made to be. So the new 40mm Sirui anamorphic T1.8 lens, is it any good? To be honest, it's a huge step up from before, and it's an affordable lens. Now, if you're looking and thinking, how is $799 affordable? Well, that is because in the world of anamorphic lenses, it's usually very expensive to get an anamorphic lens. So at $799, that is pretty affordable for what you're getting. Anamorphic lenses can cost tens of thousands of dollars, so this is pretty reasonably priced. And the fact that it's autofocus, so just so you know, there's a competition out at the moment between, I think it's Blazar and Sirui, who launched the first autofocus anamorphic lens in the world, and I think Sirui beat them to it. I'm not too sure. I don't know if everything is on production yet, but pretty much Blazar and Sirui are having this race to make sure who gets the first autofocus lens. And that's great. For us as creators, the competition is good. Now, I am going to be comparing this to the previous Sirui f1.8 anamorphic lens, and what is pretty cool with that is these were the first ones that Sirui made. In actual fact, these were the first affordable anamorphic lenses that you as a creator could buy and afford. So it's going to be pretty good to see how far Sirui's come in a very, very short time, and see if this is actually a lot better than this or if it's just an autofocus hype. Now, it is autofocus, and I don't have the best autofocus camera in the world to test that on. Why? Because I don't really use autofocus much. So this is tested on the GH6. Now, if you know Panasonic, the GH5 and GH6 had pretty much terrible autofocus. So if this is half good, that means it's pretty damn good. The GH7, which has obviously come out in the G9 Mark II, has the best, probably arguably the best autofocus known to man. So the fact that it's doing really well on this is great. And just so you know, there is no more noise when it focuses. That noise seems to have disappeared. Also, this is the MFT version, recently just released. I don't know if this is part of production now, but most YouTubers in the beginning got the Sony E-mount, and obviously you all heard that autofocus massive noise. I can confirm that it's gone in this. This sounds like a normal lens when it's focusing. There is no more noise in this at all. It doesn't make a noise when you autofocus, nothing more than a normal lens. So I cannot confirm if that is only MFT version. I highly doubt that because it's just the mount that changes, but highly possible that now that MFT has been released, because it is on the production version, I'm guessing Sirui might have fixed that noisy autofocus. So I can confirm with this one, it's gone. Just keep in mind that these are APS-C lenses. So Sirui makes this for Sony E, Nikon Z, MFT, and Fuji X. So if you have an APS-C camera, there's a bonus for you. Not just that, but a lot of the times APS-C works really well on anamorphic. Now, I'm not going to get into the super technical side of it. I'll explain some of it just now, but it's good to know that they are looking after the APS-C guys. Now, the lens does have a 77mm diameter here for your filter, and on the outside, this is 80mm natively for a matte box. So there's no additional attachment. A matte box will actually slip onto here and you can clamp it straight on without the need of having adapter rings if you have an 80mm matte box. It does weigh 614 grams and has an aperture from T1.8 to T22, which is different from the previous model, which was only f1.8 to f16. Now you can turn the aperture manually. You can also switch the click off, so it's clickless, and it's smooth. But if you do turn it all the way over to the red A that is on here, that is essentially auto. What that is allowing is your camera to take control over the connectors on the back, and now you can scroll on your thumb dial or your front finger dial on your camera to change the aperture, much like you would on a normal lens. You then have an AFL button. Now that AFL button is when you are in autofocus mode on your camera and you are holding your camera, you can just hold that button in and that will lock the focus. So let's say you do have a shot, there's a bride and groom standing at the end of the aisle, but you do want to kind of move from behind the flowers over. You can focus on the bride and groom, hold the lock in, and then move the shot so that the autofocus doesn't just quickly jump onto the flowers. Because that is the problem with autofocus. It doesn't have the brain that you may have, and it doesn't know the shot that you want. So it is pretty cool that it has that. It also has a little autofocus to manual focus little lever, so if you want to switch that over to manual focus, and now the front ring becomes your manual focus ring. Just keep in mind that this is focused by wire, so there is no hard stop on this. It's not a 200 or 300 degree throw. This is just completely focused by wire, but it does work very well, and I've tested that. So yes, you could still put a little follow focus on here and manually control it and switch to autofocus if need be. You also have a USB-C port on the back over here to give your lens updates. Now I think the biggest question over here is why and what is anamorphic? Most people don't know, and most people add a black bar at the top and the bottom of the screen, and that is completely amateur. I see a lot of people doing wedding videos nowadays adding black bars to the top and the bottom of the screen. Sadly, in the real world of cameras, you pretty much look like an idiot if you're doing that, because you are literally taking away from the picture. Anamorphic does the complete opposite. Anamorphic adds to the picture. Let me explain. Let's just say you are using a 40mm lens right now, and this is 40mm top to bottom, left to right. As soon as you put an anamorphic lens on, it actually squashes the image. It squashes that image because of the optics inside the lens. It only squashes it left to right, doesn't squash it top to bottom. So in editing, you would go and stretch out that image, essentially adding picture to the left and the right, giving you a normal focal length over here, but a wider focal length on the sides, which is not usually seen. This is why movies that are in the, what they used to call letterbox kind of look so good. It's different when you look at it. The problem is when you're adding black bars to the top and the bottom, your camera is recording right now. This is 16:9. When you're adding black bars to the top and the bottom, you're just cropping footage away out of the original image, taking resolution out of your image completely. So this is why anamorphic looks different. Not just that, but there are other elements, the flare, which I will show you in a bit, as well as oval bokeh balls. And Sirui has done something a little bit cool with the bokeh balls. Now on this specific lens, it's 1.33 squeeze. In other words, the picture is originally squashed onto the sensor by 1.33 times, meaning I need to expand it by 1.33 times. Now you do get 1.5x and 2x, but because of APS-C, 1.33 is the sweet spot for APS-C cameras. So stop adding the black bars to wedding videos. You're essentially taking image away from the bride rather than giving them image on the left and the right. We've all done it. It's okay. Now, all of that just adds to that something about anamorphic footage. It just looks different. When you couple that with amazing music and super cool sound effects, you get that cinema kind of feel. And thanks to the intro of this video, that was all done through Soundstripe, who is the sponsor of today's video. Now, I know what you're thinking, it's a plug. The reality behind Soundstripe is I've been using Soundstripe for about, I don't know, 5-6 years. I have lost counting how long I've been with Soundstripe, but not just that, I still pay my Soundstripe yearly membership. So if you're thinking I'm getting Soundstripe for free, and this is why I plug Soundstripe, not the case. Soundstripe offers full commercial licensing. So on their Pro plan, I get unlimited music, sound effects, and I can use that for all my clients, regardless of where they post it. Even if they boost it on social media, or even if I want to post it on television, Soundstripe covers licensing for that. I told you they've got a library of sound effects. They've also got for stock footage. But if you're lazy like me, probably shouldn't do that, you might want to check out their AI song editing, which allows you to take a 4-minute song, select the best parts, drop it into a timeline, and online Soundstripe just remixes that into those segments, even if there's lyrics, into the perfect beat for your edit. So if you're looking for the most coolest song, but you want those elements to be in a 40-second edit for your reel, you can do that. Super simple. I will leave a link in the description. You can head over to www.soundstripe.com/rich and they will hook you up. The comparison and test footage. Now this might be what you came for. Let's say you do own these and you want to know if it's worth you even buying these. Well, I don't even use these. And I bought these with my own money. I've got 3 focal lengths of the 4 and never ended up using them for a very specific reason, and I'm going to show you that in a bit. Now unfortunately the new lenses are 40mm and the closest focal length in the old one is 35mm, so there's a fraction wider, still 1.33 squeeze. So I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison and you can have a look. However, what I do want to show you that is, firstly, side by side, this is a little bit wider. So if the model and the tripod is in the same place, this will be wider a bit than this. So I've moved the camera a little bit forward to Michelle to give you an equal comparison between the two. Now I have taken the lenses from T1.8 and f1.8 to 2, 2.2, 2.5 and 2.8. So we can see the sharpness as well as the bokeh and how it looks. Now it's pretty clear that the 40mm T1.8 is definitely sharper than this. It's not sharper in a matter of just a ton of sharpness, but it's definitely got cleaner lines. It just looks more refined. And when you do stop that down to T2.8, you can see that this is a lot cleaner image. This looks extremely soft, almost too soft, like it's out of focus. So they've done a lot on this lens. One thing that you might notice is that the 40mm doesn't have as oval bokeh as this one. Let me explain. The purpose of anamorphic lenses and the reason why people love them is due to character. So what Sirui has actually done is, when this is wide open at T1.8, the bokeh gives you this kind of hexagon, bit of an odd kind of look, which is cool. That's what the character of the lens is. But as soon as you stop down to like T2.8, the bokeh starts to oval up, matching the normal kind of anamorphic look, which is pretty cool. It's something I like. I'm not gonna lie and say that I wish it was always oval. I do like character in a lens. I like when a lens just looks a little bit different to everything else. Eventually that becomes part of your style and it's a unique look that you like. At the end of the day, you need to be able to film and create what you want. But there is something else noticeable, and I noticed that on the Nightwalkers. If you watch my Nightwalker review, you would have seen that I pointed that out. This new 40mm is definitely got less contrast than the previous one. Now this is a bit of a pro and a con. Let me explain. The nice thing with it being a little bit flatter image, less contrast, is it allows you to dial it in post. However, the benefit of having more contrast is there's less work for you to do to the final image, meaning you can get your work out quicker. To be honest, I much prefer this way because I do like to play with my footage. Less contrast means I'm not baked in with specific colors. So I do like the fact that they've done this, and I like that lack of contrast. Finally, the flare. This is what everyone wants to know when it comes to anamorphic lenses is, how much does it flare? Now the reality behind this is I don't use this lens anymore because of its flare, and this lens on the other hand is really difficult to get the flare, and that's actually a good thing, and I'm going to show you why. The problem is with lenses when they just flare for everything is what this lens does. It doesn't matter what it is, the light doesn't even have to be direct, it would flare. So for instance, right now, if I stuck this lens on the camera, that light wouldn't flare. Definitely not. It's not direct enough in the lens. That LED really needs to be pointed towards it and really getting it, whereas this just flares for no reason. So I did a side-by-side because another thing that I checked was that at T1.8, this lens's flare is kind of subtle, which is really nice, but as soon as you stop it to T4, it really gets a little bit more easier to pull the flare out. So this is the 40mm at T1.8, and whether I move backwards and forwards, you can see that when I do move back, it disappears a little bit, which is nice. It's really the things that you're focusing on. You don't want it to just flare all around. And even at T4, you can see that it's still fairly consistent. Unlike this lens, it just flares for everything. Honestly, the older Sirui lens is pretty bad. It flares for a lot, and the biggest issue was the 24mm and the 35mm and the 50mm. They all flared a little bit differently, and the color reproduction on all of them was horrendous. So this isn't ideal, but there's something else that you might notice on this footage. And this is where Sirui promises something really cool with the new lens. And that makes it very expensive usually. Sirui is promising constant magnification. Now what that means is at its minimal focus distance of, I think it's 60 centimeters, I'll put it on the screen. Usually what happens is the 1.33 times squeeze factor changes quite considerably. So you would need to change it to say 1.28 or 1.42, whatever happens to that squeeze factor. So it's not consistent when you're filming something close up. Once you move back, then it's consistent all the way. So anything from 1.5 meters away with this lens is completely consistent. But as soon as something gets close, it looks a bit odd. And you can see that on this footage. You can see that this lens looks a lot flatter. And if I had to move it further away and leave the squeeze, then it's perfect. So this is a bit cumbersome to use. You've got to be careful on the close-up shots because nothing's consistent anymore. So with that said, what's the verdict? This new 40mm T1.8 is amazing. I love it. It gives me the feels, it gives me the tingles, like I just want to go out and film because there's nothing better than that letterbox kind of feel. And not just that, but if the night walkers were something to go by, we know there's going to be more focal lengths coming out on this. A wider one and a more telephoto one covers pretty much every single job, whether it's weddings, music videos, or super cool documentaries that you want to make. This lens is amazing. I love it. Well done to Sirui. They've taken what people thought was good and they've made it way better. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed that wherever you're in the world. Have a good day, good evening, good night. Goodbye.